What's going on, folks? No fancy intro or anything like that. Just want to obviously jump in here to talk about Chase Young signing. Give me just a minute because I'm going to just make sure that everybody knows this on Facebook and Twitter, all that fun stuff. But at any rate, it's a pretty big deal for the Saints. I mean, look, I think a lot of people were concerned with the visit not happening on Friday like it should. And so I think of course, people were like, well, what does that mean? Because the Titans were in there, the Panthers were in there, all that fun stuff. But again, for the Saints, this is a big deal. I mean, this is not just somebody that's, just a player, right? I mean, this is a guy that could potentially be a big game changer for you. I mean, they had a need at pass rusher. Again, one of the things that Ross and I had talked about, and something I've wrote about a lot, is the fact that they need somebody, a game changer, because when it's a pivotal situation, they need somebody to get a stop. They need somebody to make something happen defensively. Look, Carl Granderson is Carl Granderson. I think he does a great job. I think Cam Jordan, obviously played hurt a little bit, but a guy like Chase Young is in that category. And, look, the Commanders, it wasn't working the greatest for him. For San Francisco, he was in there and he obviously was in the Super Bowl. Now, look, with Chase Young, I think the concern there is you see some of his film, and I don't want to say taking plays off, but you don't necessarily see the entire effort and there 100%. And that's my only question with him is, do you get Chase Young for 60 minutes at the highest level? And I think that's what I want to be most concerned about, right? Because I think on paper, this move looks excellent. I think the Willie Gay Jr. move looks excellent too. And I really like what Willie Gay Jr. is going to bring to the table. But now this is a really crowded room, because you have Cam Jordan, you have Carl Granderson, you have Chase Young now, you have Tano still, you have Peyton Turner and Isaiah Foskey, and then Nico Lalos is a guy that you brought back on a reserve future deal. I mean, this is a really crowded room. Now, here's another couple things is that, when they do the sub rush, they can kick Tano inside, they can kick Peyton Turner inside. I don't know that you'd say they're going to move somebody like that to the interior to stay there. But again, it's really interesting because now there's a lot of bodies there. There's a lot of guys there. And with Chase Young, obviously you don't just bring him in just to play a few snaps, right? You are bringing him in for a purpose and such. But look, I like the signing. I think the financials, it makes sense because we're kind of past this big, huge wave of free agency now. And so most of the guys that are going to be signing are going to be those 1-year deals. So 1-year deal up to $13 million. I'm sure the base will be reasonable. I'm sure there's a signing bonus that comes into play. And then probably most of it is going to be built with incentives, sacks or Pro Bowl or Super Bowl, whatever the case may be. That's kind of the structure that'll end up happening. But look, it's again a big deal. It's a big high profile name defensively. They've had added some players there, and people were sitting there. We talked about on this show last night that people are antsy and what are the Saints doing and sitting on these pins and needles and all this fun stuff. And it's just kind of told you stay the course and such. And so free agency is never over with. It's never done with. It's going to keep happening. They've added some really good players in like May and June. They added Foster Moreau. They added, Lynn Bowden. They added Jimmy Graham last year. And so more of that could happen. And so, look, I think him wanting to play with Cam Jordan is obviously another thing that's been thrown out there is that he wants to come in and learn. And look, this 1-year deal, it is a prove it deal, right? I think as a pass rusher, you saw what Danielle Hunter got paid. You saw what some of these other guys got paid. Now it's on Chase Young to make this happen. And so again, I love the fact that they're going for it. And kind of one of the things that we've been talking about for months, been told is that this team wanted to go get a pass rusher in this offseason. So whether you've been keeping up with us or not, right, on Saints News, or if you've been listening to Ross and I, this is not really a shock. And so now I think it transitions where when you look at the draft at number 14, that's not really an area you have to go. You don't have to go defensive end now. You don't have to go edge. I think interior defensive line, I think wide receiver. I also think offensive line are the areas that you can identify now that make the most sense. And so still a lot of ways to go for, before you actually see regular football and you're going to have OTAs. But again, the main thing is he was in for his visit. He didn't leave without a contract. He got a contract. I think when you look at the pass rush market, it seems like it's a pretty fair deal. Love to see how it's structured, but now it's he has to come in here, he's got to produce it, and I really like the aspect because Kirk Cousins is now in the division, right? You've got Baker Mayfield coming back with Tampa. Carolina's got a few more weapons. So again, I think defensively, you can't afford to have any drop off or fallout for New Orleans right now, right? I just don't see it defensively. And look, they've lost some depth players. Guys like Lonnie Johnson Jr., Zach Bond, Isaac Yadam. You're going to have to backfill. And this also brings up you've got to make sure that you mend these fences with Marshawn Lattimore. Whatever's going on, you definitely have to make sure that Marshawn Lattimore is going to be on board and that you have him as a part of the plans. And I just don't see any other way for the Saints, right? I just you don't let Yadam go and then say, well, let's trade Marshawn and then start from scratch, I guess, in a way, because they could move Alante and Adebo is going to be on the outside. But then you look at the depth behind, that's a little bit of concern. And then who's going to play the slot if Alante isn't there? And just so many question marks that come up. And so, again, impromptu live, and we'll probably do more of these. Usually it's me and Ross, but I'm going to make sure a point where this season, when stuff happens, stuff breaks, I'm going to just hop on Second and Saints and just kind of talk and give my thoughts on it. So, look, yeah, I think you're right. But, to your point, yes, I don't know if it's the head on straight. I think when you look at it, if you played in Washington wasn't so glamorous. So I could understand a player coming from something like that and not being exactly happy, and going to San Francisco and then even getting a chance to win a Super Bowl. That's a big deal. But again, you go watch the film in the Super Bowl. There's some plays that said, okay, Chase, what was going on there? But I think he's a solid addition. And again, what I said on social media was that on paper it looks insane. Yeah, because considering what this team and the salary cap and everybody that talks about all this stuff with the Saints and they can't do this, they can't do that. And defensively, they have these players in piece, and then they've only added to it. I think that is quite insane. I think, at least on paper, you go across and look at their starting 11 with a couple of depth pieces. This is a pretty formidable team that they have defensively. And so I think the concern is offense, right? The concern has been offense. The concern is offense. They've got to look at this offensive line. Yeah, they have starting five right now, but there's room for improvement. And so there's just areas you have to go. I think it's unsettling. I like the fact that as of right now, it feels like the onus is on, believing in Chris Olave and A.T. Perry and Rashid Shaheed. But again, we know Hunter Renfro is probably a possibility. We know that there's other veterans guys that are potentially going to come out on board. But I like the Chase Young signing. I really do. But I think for fans, that's the thing is it all looks good here in March. Just for any team, it doesn't matter. I'm not just talking specifically Saints. All the moves look great. And him wanting to be here is great. But when it comes down to it, your actions speak louder than words. He's got to show up on the field, and that's really where you got to judge everything, right? And so, not that I don't say take it with a grain of salt or proceed with caution, but look, it's happy. It's a happy time because this fan base thought they weren't going to do anything, and we told you to be patient, right? And so this is part of it. And free agency is not over. They landed two guys within the top 75 of free agents that were available now. Chase Young was one. He was top 25. Willie Gay Jr. was, top 75. And so I don't think you can be upset at that. I think where you need to put your attention to is now offensively. And so I don't know what you do, again, what this spells for Peyton Turner, what that spells, because you look behind it. Turner's gone after this year, practically. I mean, he's a free agent at least. Tano's a free agent. So there's some work that you have to figure out after this. But for the meantime, it looks really good. I think people should be happy about Chase Young. And, I hope the guy has 10 sacks. I think they need a pass rusher off that edge because Carl Granderson did a good job. I think Brian Brzee was a great first round pick. I think he's only going to get better, but they need somebody off that edge. And, you look at the Saints and their pass rush, they get a lot from the linebacking group. I mean, DeMario's up there. You got guys that come off in the secondary, but they need somebody off that edge who's going to rival what Carl Granderson can do or, a healthy Cam could do. But I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. But impromptu live session. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll do more of these, like I said, but that's going to do it for today. Chase Young in Big Easy. Exciting time for New Orleans.